I think there's no better way to start this series about the Wild West history than to talk about the map. After all, this is the main element that makes the Wild West, because it does a very good job at putting the player in a western setting. Despite that, I feel like most players really take the beauty of the Wild West map for granted. I mean, just look at some of the beautiful sceneries that you can find around the game. It's truly amazing. And speaking of how nice the map looks, you might be wondering if it's always been this way, or if it's ever going to get even better. But I'm guessing that if you click on this video, it's because the main question on your mind is how we got here, and how come the Wild West looks the way it does today. So let's take a deep dive into the Wild West history to find out. Starting in 2018, which as you may know, is the year when Starboard Studios was first founded and when the Wild West first started being worked on. And in these times of early development, the dev team came up with the first plan of what the map could potentially look like. And you can tell by looking at this that they pretty much stuck to the plan when it came to actually developing the map. The first thing I noticed is that the devs always planned that Bronze would be the main city in the game, as it's literally called City. I also think it's interesting that they first planned on there being a river separating the plains from Bronze City, which of course we now know that this isn't a thing and they're actually connected by land. We can also see some other spots, like Reservation Camp, Paraíso, Dolores Ranch, Puerto Dorado, and Howling Peak. Additionally, they seem to have planned another big city in the middle of the plains, because you can see it's connected by a rail and by a road. But obviously, we know this was discontinued. I think it's super interesting to see how the devs planned what the map would look like, and to think how that affected the way it looks like nowadays. I recommend you take a good look at it for yourself, especially if you find the history of the game's development interesting. And that takes us to the year 2019. The Wild West is officially released, and you can play the game for the small sum of 50 Robux. And this is when the first official version of the Wild West map came out. Interestingly, the way to look at the map wasn't with the mini-map that we all know today. You know, the one that you have to press M to open. Instead, the map was an item that you could have in your inventory. But let's focus on what the map actually looked like. And you can tell that it was pretty close to what they planned out. The main differences being with the bodies of water. Firstly, you can see that the river that's supposed to separate the plains from the rest of the map cuts out, instead of going till the end of the map. And secondly, the small river that was supposed to be above Pinewood Hills turned into a big lake. Other than that, you can tell the positioning of the Great Plains wasn't respected, as it was supposed to be right below Bronze City, but it ended up being to the right of it. And lastly, the most obvious change, which is that the entire top half of the map is missing. Let's just say that during these times, the map didn't have much to offer aesthetically speaking. I mean, of course, it looked better than some other games, but as you can see, many textures were missing, and it just looked kinda bland. But going back to how you could actually look at the map, later in 2019, the minimap was introduced. With it came the addition of the present camp, the windmill camp, the mines, and the hunting cabin. Other than these little additions, the map looks pretty much the same as the one from 2019. Aesthetically speaking, nothing has changed, and in-game the map looks pretty much the same as it did earlier during the year. But the grass ahead was a lot greener as we move into 2020. The Wild West is now free to play, and the Easter egg hunt event is around. And let's put it this way, the map has changed a lot. And that's mainly because a lot of new spots were added. I'm talking Buffalo Ridge, Howling Peak, Bear Paw Valley, the Great Desert, the Highlands, Puerto Dorado, Callahan Manor, Tribal Village, and Silver Hill. This marks the biggest map expansion the game has had to this date, and is probably the biggest one we'll ever see. Because I mean, they literally added a whole other half to the map. On top of that, the minimap is now in full color and there are icons showing important places such as the bank and the different shops. And let's be honest, these factors made the Wild West experience a whole lot better. The map no longer consisted of a single city alongside massive plains and a single forest. It now had a snowy area, a huge desert, a more tropical looking area, 2 new towns, plus the manor. But 2020 was a huge year for the Wild West, and the devs were not done updating the map. So if we go a couple months later into 2020, the game updated yet again and forts are now a thing. And by forts, I mean 2 of them. Fort Henry in the Great Plains and Fort Spencer near Bear Paw Valley. And little fun fact, this is when I first started playing the game, cause I remember that the forts update had just came out. Anyways, that wraps it up for 2020, which, let's just say, it was a big year for the game. meaning we're now moving on to 2021, which definitely wasn't as big of a year, but some changes were still made. I'm of course talking about the 2021 Halloween event, which, I'm just saying, it was the best Halloween event of all time. Just saying. But anyways, the only reason we're speaking about this Halloween event is because with it came a whole revamp of the tribal forest area. This update added a whole new town, Silver Town, along with the reservation camp, which you can now spawn at instead of tribal camp. This addition clearly gave some life to a spot on the map that was otherwise pretty empty and boring. There is also when the little sawmill area next to the tribal camp was added. And that's all for 2021. Like I said, it definitely wasn't as big as 2020, but I think the reservation camp was pretty neat. And this brings us to 2022, which was characterized by lack of updates. Nonetheless, Pinewood Hills was completely revamped. This was a part of the Sneaky Shane mini update, which is also when the Axagon was released. The additions to Pinewood Hills included a new bridge, some lavender flowers that glow in the dark, and the whole thing was made a lot rockier overall. And I guess that in the 2022 Halloween event, a big boat was added in the middle of the desert, but I'm not gonna count that because it was just during the event and it then got removed. And that concludes 2022. You might start seeing a trend here. Every single year, it seems like the additions to the map get smaller and smaller, and 2023 definitely was no exception. On this year, the main change was a big revamp of the whole church area alongside the addition of the Lazarus Laboratory. But 2023 was also the year on which the Faction War update was released, introducing different territories around the map. Now, other than adding some ugly black squares all over your map, this update also added some fireworks things in each territory, which concludes the map updates for 2023. Yup, not a very noteworthy year. But that takes us into 2024, which, yeah, was just more of the same. But hey, at least we got a Windmill Camp revamp, and that was about it. But this cycle of getting less and less map updates every single year would come to a brutal stop in 2025. And unless you've been living under a rock, you all perfectly know why. And this is none other than the progression update, cause it introduced a ton of changes. First of all, the western side of the map now has two new locations, Glacial Hollow and Alpine Meadows. The area above Howling Peak has also now received a huge revamp and it's now called Cedar Rapids. And to be honest, this has to be my favorite spot on the map. I mean, just look at it, so beautiful. Some other changes include the Grizzly Redwoods, which is an area that wasn't named before. Then we obviously have the Manor, which is now burned down, along with the Laura's Ranch, which is the new spawn point for the Manor area. And then we have the prison camp, which looks a lot better now, and is also now called the Ashburn Prison. And obviously, Bronze City and Puerto Dorado have been completely changed, but the video would be too long if I went into every single little detail. So let's keep it simple, they look a lot better now. And the devs did a tremendous job at revamping the most populated cities in the game. And the same goes for the rest of the map. I know there's probably a ton of little details that I didn't cover in here, but it would just be way too long if I did. So let me know in the comments if you think I missed anything noteworthy for the progression update. But we aren't done yet, because we all know that a couple of months after the release of progression, the Paraíso Verde update came out. And even though capybaras were by far the best addition in this update, it also included a new spot on the map, which is called, yup, Paraíso Verde. This is the latest addition to the map, and I gotta say it's nice seeing the Highlands finally being used for something. Especially after they've been coming soon for so long. And that, my friends, is the history of the Wild West map. It's crazy how far the game has come with its map, and let's hope we keep seeing more improvements in the future. And if you got this far into the video, it would really mean a ton if you subscribed, because believe it or not, these videos take multiple hours to research and edit. But before I roll out the outro, here's a list of people that I want to thank for helping in the making of this video in any way, shape or form. So yep, that's it for today, and see y'all in the next episode of The Wild West History.